card you're using or your credit card you're using has fraud protection. So if you found your place in Haggai tonight, we'll probably read most of it because there's just not a lot here. There's only 38 verses, if I remember right, 2 chapters. Haggai is one of 3 prophets of books that deal with Israel and Judah after the Babylonian captivity. The rest of them, the ones we've looked at so far, all deal with before the Babylonian captivity. Most of it was God warning Israel of what's going to happen if they didn't change their way. Well, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi all deal with Israel from God after the captivity. So after they're back in Jerusalem, back in the land, those 3 prophets deal with Israel during that time period. Haggai is directly when they went back to start rebuilding. And we'll look at that, if you've read Ezra and Nehemiah, they kind of drug their feet on getting the rebuilding done. Well, Haggai addresses that to everybody in Jerusalem. God's basically had enough and says, look, you guys need to get busy. So chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the 2nd year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the 1st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet unto Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest. I'll pause there for a minute. You'll notice it said Zerubbabel was governor. So before the Babylonian captivity, they always had a king, right? After the Babylonian captivity, they don't have a king again. They won't until Christ comes back. I found that kind of interesting that all through that time, but in Jeremiah, I looked it up earlier, it's Jeremiah 22:30, God tells Jeremiah to tell him, look, after this king, that's it. His line is done. So they don't have a king over them until Christ comes back after the captivity. The high priest saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, this people say, the time is not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. Then came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste? Now, therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. That consider your ways, we'll see one other time, and 5 times in this short little book, God says to them to consider. Consider their ways, consider what they're doing. And, that's something, if the Lord's telling you to consider your ways or consider what you're doing, you probably ought to listen. Because it's probably not a good thing you're doing. Goes on in verse 6 and says, ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Verse 6 is kind of interesting. They're working. They're doing the things they ought to do, right? Support a family, feed a family. God's telling them, you're out there doing all that, but you're not bringing in enough. I wonder why that is. You've got clothes, but you're not warm. You're earning money, but you're putting it in a bag with holes in it. You're out there doing everything that, what we would consider a man to be out doing today, but they were neglecting God's house being rebuilt. We get busy. It was funny, we were talking about this before service tonight. We get busy. Everything in the world comes up. We're so busy today that we ignore the house of God a lot. We have more conveniences in our day than they did 50 years ago, 75 years ago, and we have less time. That's amazing to think about. I'm a computer engineer. I work in a field where I hop on my computer in the morning, and in a blink of an eye, I'm logged into a computer in Castaneta, Italy, Petersburg, England, all over the world, just in a blink of an eye. We have things so quick and easy and have no time to do anything. I know I battle that all the time. I battle that, and it's just me and my wife in the house. We don't have kids to keep up with. We don't have all of that going on, and I still have no time. What am I putting in front of God? Here's Israel. They're back in Jerusalem. If you think about it, if you got a family living in that time, you need to put food on the table, a roof over the house, clothes on the kids, all that stuff. It's kind of easy to see how Israel put aside getting that temple rebuilt, isn't it? It's easy to look at them and say, well, they were slack and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. Well, they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, but can you say they were slacking? They were doing what we would consider men to be needing to do, and women as well. But it was putting other things in front of what God had them to do. I'm sure we're all guilty of that. God would have us to do something, or we need to do something, and it's easy for work to get in the way, or anything to get in the way. For me, it's work, because I can be a bit of a workaholic, and it's easy. Oh, I can just keep working. I got another 30 minutes, won't matter. I've already been in front of my computer for 10 hours at that point. Most days, I work 6 to 4. And I would keep working, but thankfully my wife will come give me the evil eye if I keep working. And I'm thankful for that, because otherwise I'd sit there all day and all night because my work's never done. I would sit there and do that and not have time to study my Bible for tonight. Thankfully, when I get up in the morning, that's the first thing I do. I'm actually really pretty decent in that habit. There are days I don't, but I'm pretty decent with that now. But it'd be easy to put all that stuff before what I really need to do. What I really need to do in the evening is pay attention to my wife, or be here at church, or study for Wednesday nights, or whatever else. Like I said, it's easy to look at Israel and chuckle because they were never doing what they should have been doing. But neither are we for the most part. They weren't slacking. Like I said, they were working. They were getting things done. It's just not what they were supposed to be doing. Verse 8 goes on to say, go up to the mountains and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord. Ye looked for much, and lo, it came to little. And when ye brought it home, I did blow up on it. Why, saith the Lord of hosts? Because of mine house that is waste, and ye run every man unto his own house. Therefore the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit. God's telling them, look, just go get the wood. Let's get this done. You build that house, and I'll take pleasure in it, and I'll be glorified. And I love verse 9 where it starts off, ye looked for much, and lo, it came little. We fall in that trap a lot. We always after that next best thing, right? And always find out it wasn't quite worth it. I've been kind of looking for a different job. My current one is getting beyond what I can consider for a good stress level. I thrive on the high stress of my career. This is way above and beyond since about January. So I've been kind of looking for a job, and I've been praying that I don't fall in that trap of, oh, the pay's a whole lot better, I'm just going to jump on that job. It's hard. There's been a couple of jobs I know I could have gotten that paid better, but I know it wouldn't have been worth it in the long run. I keep praying that God would send me the right job. I think he did. I should have a job offer next week. And when God moves and when you wait on him for things like that, it's amazing how quickly things can go. I've been praying for a new job since January. And I've applied to a few. Monday, my phone blows up at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon for the boss I had. He changed companies 3 years ago. Out of the blue, sends me a text message. Said, hey, how you doing? I told him I was doing good. He goes, yeah, we're having fun on the bus. You ready for your ticket? Next thing I know, I'm basically got a job offer. So be praying about that, please, because God gave me the job I have now, and I don't want to leave it unless that's what he wants. But all that to say that we can look. Grass is always greener on the other side. Things are always better. Well, the grass is always greener on the other side because that's where the septic tank is. But, and that's basically what he's saying. Look, ye looked for much, and lo, it came to little. We are always looking for that next best thing, that next greatest thing, be it a job, a new car, a new firearm, whatever it might be. Yeah, I just named the big things for me. So whatever it might be, we look at those, and that's what we strive after. But God's like, are you asking me about it? Is this what I have for you? Looked for much, and it came to little. I know a couple of Christian friends that looked for new jobs, got new jobs, almost doubled their salary. Now they're miserable. Totally miserable. I don't want that. Amen. None of us should ever want that. But we always have to keep what God would have for us first and foremost. If we stay in that path, things are where we need them to be. We're following him and doing what he would have us to do. And it goes on, verse 9 is just great. Ye looked for much, and lo, it came to little. And when ye brought it home, I did blow upon it. Why? Saith the Lord of hosts, because of mine house that is waste, and ye run every man unto his own house. God's saying, look, you guys put all this work and all this effort in, I just blew upon it, and that was it. I have something you need to do, and you're not doing it. You need to get after it. Therefore, the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit. Drought. God's used that before. And on the land, and upon the mountains, and upon the corn, and upon the new wine, and upon the oil, and upon that which the ground bringeth forth, and upon men, and upon cattle, and upon all the labor of the hands. God said he's had enough. It's time for a drought. You guys are going to do what I want you to do. You're going to pay for it if you don't. Keep in mind, at this point, these people are just fresh out of captivity in Babylon. You would think they'd be excited to get back to their homeland, to get back to what God gave them initially. And they were. They left, they built houses, things like that, but didn't go that next step that God wanted them to take. Our lives are a lot like that. God saves us. There's things he would like us to do. And you know what? Not everybody's called to be a missionary. Some people are just called to be active in their local church, tithe, help out, whatever it may be. Bless those around them just by being here. But when you're not doing those things, that's not making the Lord happy. Now, under grace and New Testament, we don't have to worry about a direct curse from God like this most of the time. I'm sure there's times his chastenment comes, it seems like a curse, but we don't have that drastic of punishment, because Israel is God's earthly people, and it was about the land for them. And he gave them a way to go back to that land, and it took him to bring a drought to get them to just do what he wanted them to do. I have told you guys before about putting off starting trail life for so many years. And God didn't curse me, but I had a feeling if I didn't act, not that he was going to punish me, but that opportunity may pass by. And what impact might that have on our community? Like I said, I wasn't worried about some great curse from God if I didn't start trail life, but I was concerned at that point if I didn't do something that the opportunity would pass by, that maybe we wouldn't as a church have that impact on young men. Verse 12 goes on to say, then Zerubbabel, and by the way, if you're anybody out there having a son or a grandson soon, great name. Just saying, great. Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of the Lord their God and the words of Haggai the prophet, as the Lord their God had sent him, and the people did fear before the Lord. It's, like I said, it's typical of what we read in the Old Testament for Israel. God raises up a man, tells that man to tell the people, look, this is coming. You need to get straight. Reminds me of reading Judges. All the issues Israel had, God would raise up a judge, take care of business. Israel would act right for a little while, and then right back worshiping Baal again. So God said what he was going to do. And I love that. Obeyed the voice of the Lord their God. How easy could our lives be if we just remembered to do that all the time? Obey the voice of the Lord our God. We have it in front of us. Most of us probably have. I bet you I have 6 Bibles at home. I've got one on my phone. I got a Bible program on all of my computers, even my work computers. We have it everywhere. But obeying the voice of the Lord is pretty easy to say and a lot harder to do. It can be hard to do from one minute to the next sometimes. I've told you guys before that I've really gotten good, or I've gotten better at when I get up in the morning, that's when I study and read my Bible, pray, take my time before I start my day. But with the things that have been going on at work, it's easy for me to walk into my office in the morning, fire up my computer, and immediately start work. It's that easy to get out of a habit. It's that easy to put something else between me and God. Last week we looked at Hosea and what he had to say. And, I mentioned that anything that comes between you and God is sin. My job is not a sin, but if I put that before God, that becomes a sin in my life. The funniest part is, and it's true, studying this could actually become a sin in your life. You know how? You're spending time with God and studying his word, but if you're doing that, neglecting the family he gave you, sin, right? Pretty simple. Not one you want to think about normally, but it's definitely there. I have a responsibility at home. Brother Chuck has a responsibility at home. If we put things and neglect that God gave us, that sacred family, that can become sin too. Even studying the Bible. Because then you're studying it, not applying it. So you're just studying a book at that point. I thought you could turn the Bible into that if you're not careful. But like I said, reading verse 12 where it said, obey the voice of the Lord. They obeyed the voice of the Lord their God. As soon as I read that, the first thing I thought was Judges, because we're going to keep reading and they fall right back again. But you know what? Those days I get up and actually read and study my Bible and spend the time with the Lord, it's not hard in a couple hours to, lose my temper, those kind of things, and be right back to where I was before I started reading and studying for my day. We all fight that. We all live in the flesh. We all struggle with that every day. So it's easy to chuckle when you read sometimes in Israel. If you start chuckling a little too much, go look in the mirror and ask yourself that question. When was the last time I did this? Some days I could say 10 minutes ago. I mean, I'm sure all of us can do that. We all have those ups and downs. Peter's a great example too. We like to chuckle at Peter and the things he said and the things he did. Peter's just a great example of what we live every day, every single day. Hot-tempered one time, I remember right after I got saved, reading and studying about Peter and some of the other disciples. I remember laughing at, Peter thinking, man, he was with Jesus every day. And then it dawned on me, oh yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow. But we all fight that. Verse 13, then spake Haggai, the Lord's messenger, in the Lord's message unto the people, saying, I am with you, saith the Lord. And the Lord stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people, and they came and did work in the house of the Lord of hosts, their God, in the 4 and 20th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king. One neat thing with a lot of this, people will say, well, the Bible's not real, or you can't figure out when this stuff happens. I don't know, the Lord's pretty clear on when Haggai started preaching, was the 2nd year of the king, the 6th month and the 1st day. It only took 23 days for them to start working. That's not too bad. Got a whole people together, stirred up the governor and the high priest, and they start working on rebuilding God's house. Chapter 2, verse 1, in the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by the prophet Haggai, saying, speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and to the residue of people, saying, who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? And how do ye see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? That would have been something, though, if you think about it. He said, who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? They were in captivity for 70 years. There are probably only a couple people that might have seen the temple in its original glory. Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord, and be strong, O Joshua, son of Josedek, the high priest, and be strong, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work. For I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. I'll tell on myself with this one. That part where it says, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work. I got to admit, I used that when my boy was a teenager on him. I know it's out of context and everything, but, when you parents understand, you got a teenager at home, getting him to work, sometimes it takes a little effort. Sometimes it takes, So, yeah, I got to admit, I used that one on Drew at least once. But, to me, that also says something. The Lord wants us to work. He doesn't want man to be lazy. You look at every man God ever called in the Bible, before God called him, he was working. Yep. He was doing something. He may not have been working for God when he got called, but he was working. I always think of Elisha. When Elijah walked by, he's out plowing the field. He was working. Gideon, you can go on and on. The disciples, they were out fishing. You had Peter and Andrew, James and John. Everybody God ever called was working. Amen. According to the word that I have covenanted with you, when ye came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you, fear ye not. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens, and the earth, and the sea, and the dry land. And I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. And I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. So, as typical with all these prophets we've looked at, God shifts from dealing with Israel at the current time and shows us a glimpse of when he's coming again. Those verses on that promise to Zerubbabel there is yet to come. When Christ comes back to rule and to reign, he's going to shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land. All the nations are going to shake before him. Verse 8 goes on to say, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than of the former, saith the Lord of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, saith the Lord of hosts. So that's something good to look forward to, right? Peace one day that this world has never known. Well, it knew it when God first created it, and before the fall in the garden, it knew a little peace. But since then, this world's never known peace. One day, we'll have peace. In the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, ask now the priests concerning the law, saying, if one bear holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, and with his skirt do touch bread, or pottage, or wine, or oil, or any meat, shall it be holy? And the priest answered and said, No. Then said Haggai, if one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priest answered and said, It shall be unclean. Then answered Haggai and said, So this people, and so is this people, and so is this nation before me, saith the Lord. And so is every work of their hands, and that which they offer there is unclean. And now I pray you, consider from this day and upward, from before a stone was laid upon a stone in the temple of the Lord, since those days were, when one came to an heap of 20 measures, there were but 10. When one came to the press fat for to draw out 50 vessels out of the press, there were but 20. I smote you with blasting and with mildew and with hail and all the labors of your hands, yet ye turn not to me, saith the Lord. That's pretty harsh to read and to think about, that God did those things, and then to finish it up, yet you turn not to me. Man, there's some stubborn people, weren't they? I know what I see in the mirror in the mornings. I see a pretty stubborn, hard-headed guy too. I've mentioned it before. I was stubborn enough that when my wife and I got together and I moved to Kentucky, where she was living at the time, where she's from, her uncle's a pastor at a Baptist church down there. And she said, well, I go to church every Sunday. I said, oh, well, you guys know how it is, right? You got to impress the lady. Okay, I'll go to church with you. Started going to church there in June. We moved back up here in December. We went every Sunday. I didn't go Wednesdays because of the job I had. But we went every Sunday morning, Sunday evening. I heard Melvin Daniel preach many, many messages, and I would hold myself in the pew to stop from going forward because I didn't need that crutch in my life. I was smarter than those Christians. I didn't need that make-believe in my life. That's stubborn. So we move up here. And looking back now, I can see the Lord orchestrating things, but we got married December 1st. We moved to Ohio December 28th. I had a great job. The end of March, 1st of April, I got a phone call from my boss. It said, "Hey, I just mailed you your last paycheck." I've only been married 4 months. Took my wife from her home and brought her up here, and I got no job. Like I said, if I just stayed with that job, I wouldn't have got saved. If things hadn't happened the way they did, I wouldn't be standing here now. We moved a year later, and behind where I lived, my papa lived. My papa's a saved man. First day in the house, Friday, he comes walking in the door, didn't knock, just walked in the door. Said it was nice having his grandson living that close, and he'd see me at church Sunday morning. Wasn't a question, nothing. And my wife readily agreed, and I'm going, oh man. So we went to church for 3 months. I didn't need that crutch. Stubborn, hard-headed. I was smarter than that, you know. So I understand Israel here being a little hard-headed when God does things in their life. God had done some things, only I didn't know it in my life. But I was stubborn and hard-headed, and I didn't need that crutch. I didn't need the make-believe. I've said before, I am so thankful I got that crutch every single day when I get out of bed. I don't have to go through this world alone. I don't have to deal with any of this by myself. Me getting saved is the only reason I'm still married. My wife was not going to stay married to an alcoholic. Lord just took that away. I didn't have to fight that battle, thankfully. Lord also repaired my marriage. My wife and I have been married 13 and a half years. That wouldn't have happened if I'd have stayed stubborn. But being a man of the flesh, and I'll just say a man in general, you know what? That stubborn streak rears its head all the time. I bet Terry, Brother Art, as old as you gentlemen are getting, you can probably say every day that stubborn streak still bears its head once in a while. Or you got to fight to keep it down. So as we chuckle at Israel, falling right back to where they were like they always do, we're just as stubborn. We're just as pig-headed. I'd like to think that I'm getting better at it. You'd have to ask my wife for sure. I think I'm getting a little better at it. But we all deal with that. We all have those battles, you know. I know how I am. I get something in my head that needs to get done. I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to get it done. Well, it usually works out a little better if I back off a little bit, pray about it, take some time, think about it. But I don't always do that. I'm getting better about that, but like I said, we chuckle at Israel, and we all fight that battle every day. Verse 18 goes on, it says, "Consider now from this day and upward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, even from the day that the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid, consider it. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yea, and as yet the vine and the fig tree and the pomegranate and the olive tree hath not brought forth? From this day will I bless you. And again the word of the Lord came unto Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of all of the heathen, and I will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and their riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his brother. And that day, saith the Lord of hosts, will I take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and will make thee a signet, for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts. Short little book, whole lot in it that we didn't even get into tonight. I'm hoping that by just giving these brief overviews of these Old Testament prophets, that it would pique your interest to go and study and read a little more about them. We looked at Hosea last week. That's an amazing book. There is so much in that book. And we only covered just a tiny portion of it in about 45 minutes. I don't even know if we were that long last week. In the New Testament, after Christ's resurrection, two guys are walking down the road to Emmaus, and he comes along and listens to them talk. And it says at the end of that little passage that he expounded upon him and explained basically that the whole Old Testament was written about him. It says the prophets, the Psalms, the books of Moses. There's a lot of Christ in all these books. There's a lot that hasn't happened yet in these books. You can debate on pre-trib, post-trib, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, it's all about him, and it all points to the cross and the work after. These are great books to study. Don't just flip past them because they're a little odd. When we get to Zechariah, there's stuff in there that men have been arguing about since Zechariah wrote it, that men will continue to argue about until God seals the deal on everything. There's a lot of that God had these men record that nobody truly understands. But that doesn't mean you ought to skip the entire book. There's a lot in there that's really good. I don't know that we'll get to Zechariah next week. I need some time on that one. But like I said, Ezekiel's full of those kind of things too, that you just read it and your eyes start bleeding and rolling back your head and nobody understands it. Guys have been arguing about it for centuries. They're going to keep arguing about it until God comes back. Like I said, don't pass that up. Don't pass up some of the names. When you go through genealogies, I'll finish with this. When you're going through those genealogies, it's easy just to start reading Bob over and over again, or just keep flipping the page quick. But the really neat thing about those genealogies is when they show up in little blips. So in Luke, we have John the Baptist's parents. His dad is going in to fulfill the office, right? He's going into the temple. I'm drawing a blank on that office name, where he fell on that. Adonijab? No. Anyway, it tells in that passage. The really neat thing is you can go all the way back and look at when exactly that he's fulfilling that part of the office, that part of the oath. With that, you can actually kind of pinpoint when Christ was actually born, based off that. There's a lot in those genealogies. There's a lot in the Bible. It just takes some time to study. And by the way, it wasn't December 25th. It was probably in September.